What's up, Kyuzu here. Haven't been posting for a bit, so let's just throw a crafting video in here. Had a tiny bit of a break, not really in the mood to stream or anything right now, or kinda ever, honestly, so we'll see. Today, we shall be crafting hunter-influenced righteous fire gloves. So, my previous gloves were Eldritch crafted and had tier 2 dexterity, but because I'm using brutal restraint now, it's just giving me a shit tonnery of extra dexterity. So with the gloves on, I'd hit like 250, and I only need like 120 at most, I think. And then also the fact that I, by accident, crafted a Master of Fire cluster duel. So, because I don't need the dexterity anymore, and because I don't need the fire exposure on the gloves anymore, I just wanted to craft a new pair of gloves. Now, the original idea was actually to recombo Temple mod so that I could keep the added fire damage against burning enemies, and the Temple mod is always tier 1 resist, so just would make my life a little bit easier. Problem is, I kind of need perfect suffixes. The prefixes doesn't matter, we'll metacraft that, but the suffixes needs to be perfect, so that just ended up being extremely difficult, because on one pair of these gloves, I need the Temple mod and tier 1 Chaos Res, and on the other ones, I would need Fire Multi and or. Well, not or, but and Chaos Res. So I don't think like it would just be an unnecessary work to try and get the Temple mod on there. But anyways, I just wanted to craft some hunter influenced gloves once again, since we don't need any of the other stuff. So this would be slightly more damage, because I'm not gonna elevate the fire damage of a time multiplier implicit. Now, sadly, I haven't learned from my mistakes from last week crafting these. There are a few problems with hunter gloves, but before we get to the problems, let's have a look at what we are trying to craft. Now, I already showed you the end result, but whatever. So, we'll start with the prefixes. These are the things we're doing last, but we will be aiming to mastercraft life, because that's 70 flat life, I think. In tier 1, perfectly divined is 89, so it's only like 19 less, so it's not that big of a deal. We're also trying to get +2 to AoE gems on the gloves, which is in tier 4 Ashling. So we need to find Ashling in the Mastermind in research. But what we will be focusing mostly on right now are the suffixes. We want Fire of a Time Multiplier, tier 1. We want any resist at tier 1. Any resist works because we will change this to fire res to make our craft easier for the fire multi. We'll get there. But basically, if we have fire res on here and we lock all the prefixes, block them rather, the only thing we can actually reforge fire with on the gloves will be fire damage over time multiplier. We also, very importantly, want tier 1 Chaos Res, because that's the only slot I have to put it. So our suffixes will be slightly difficult, because we're looking for a combination of tier 1 Chaos Res, tier 1 N Res, and then of course the tier 1 Fire Multiplier. So by spamming Reforge Fire on the gloves, it's going to get slightly difficult to even get just the multiplier, because we can hit fire damage to attacks, fire resist, or fire damage multiplier. Not only that, we also want the other two, so hitting triple tier 1 is going to take an eternity. So if we have a look at PoEDB here, we also cannot use Reforge Cold, because there is a cold damage over time multiplier, so that's cold res, cold over time multi, and I don't know if there's maybe even a cold, yeah, there's cold damage to attacks, there are also 3 mods. Same thing with Chaos, there's a Chaos damage over time multiplier, so by reforging Chaos we are mainly gonna hit Chaos damage over time multiplier. And sadly, the easiest way to craft these gloves would be to spam chaos, reforge chaos with harvest. So Hunter just has way too much garbage. If we have a look at Shaper, however, Shaper, where is it? Only has cold over time multiplier and fire over time multiplier. It doesn't have the physical, it doesn't have the chaos. Well, I guess that's it too. So with Shaper gloves, we can easier spam Reforge Chaos until we hit a second good resist and then just metacraft the fire multi. So here I have a pair of Shaper Influence gloves. I spam Reforge Chaos on until I hit, I believe, tier 1 cold. That I then change to fire through harvest. No matter which resist you need in the end, it is really important that whilst we are metacrafting for fire multiplier, it needs to be fire res. So we jump back into POEDB. So let's click on the fire tag here. So while we're reforging fire, let's hide some of the other stuff here. We can hit 3 things. We can hit fire damage to attacks, which is a prefix, or we can hit fire res, which is a suffix, or fire damage over time multipliers. That's 3 mods. So if we block all the prefixes, it's now down to only these 2 mods, fire res and fire damage over time multiplier. So if we already have fire res on here, we can only, quite literally only, hit fire damage over time multiplier. And the beauty is it only has 2 tiers as well, so we just have to, so it's a 50-50 that we get tier 1. It is a 100% guarantee that we get fire damage over time multiplier this way, but it's a 50-50 which tier we get. So on these gloves, for instance, we can see that we hit tier 2 fire damage over time multiplier. But anyway, so right now we have tier 1 fire and tier 1 chaos res. So it had 1 suffix open and it had 1 prefix open. Once again, it really helped if the gloves have 2 prefixes taken and 1 open, so that we can craft suffixes cannot be changed, which is a prefix, thus blocking all of the prefixes. So now we just reforge fire with harvest, and because the prefixes are completely filled, we cannot hit fire damage to attacks, and because we already have fire res on there, we cannot roll fire res. So quite literally, once again, the only thing we can hit is fire damage over time multiplier. And we just once again have to get lucky with the tier, which we did not on these pair. Now what we could do to actually save these gloves is to, well, either we YOLO annul the fire damage over time multiplier and go again, but let's not do that. We could get a second prefix, actually we could get a second Shaper mod, which is a prefix. We then elevate the gloves, trying to hit the fire damage over time multiplier. So if we hit the elevated fire multiplier, we now have a fire multiplier better than tier 1. But also if we brick the fire, let's say it removes the fire and elevates the other mod, we can just reforge fire again. The problem with Shaper though, it only has 2 mods. And they don't have any tags really. So we would have to reforge keep suffixes until we hit 1. And you know, that's a bit of a waste, honestly. Now at the time I was kinda alright with tier 2 fire multiplier, but I already had my Hunter influence pair as well. So I decided to buy a shit tonnery of Essence of Envy, because with Hunter Influence, this is quite literally the only way to efficiently get what I need. So Essence of Envy will guarantee that I will have tier 1 Chaos Res on there every single time. By spamming the Essence, all I really need to do is hit a second tier 1 resist. I mean, ultimately we hit the tier 1 resist and the tier 1 fire multi, but we're not that lucky, are we? So I ended up with tier 1 lightning, an open suffix, all prefixes filled. So I had to annul, and luckily I annulled a prefix. And from here we did the exact same thing. We harvest, change the lightning to fire, we craft suffixes cannot be changed, thus locking the last prefix. We then reforge fire and we hit tier 1 fire multiplier. So from here, we lock the suffixes again, and we scour the prefixes. We lock the suffixes again, and we find a tier 4 ashling so that we can add a veil mod and remove a random mod. So by crafting the suffixes cannot be changed, and having no other prefixes, suffixes cannot be changed mod is the only mod ashling can remove. So once the veil mod is on, we craft cold or fire conversion as a blocker. Then we unveil and hope to get +2 AoE, and then just mastercraft life and call it a day. Now sadly I have failed twice already, and I'm kind of running out of missions, but, oh, and money, but you know, we'll get there someday, we'll get there someday. And that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed my crafting miseries once again, and I will see you next time.